welcome back. This is the first week of philosophy and the talents of the future. In this video, we will go through some basics and the foundations of artificial intelligence. As I've said before, these lectures are not meant to cover everything that you need to know or think about, but rather they're meant to give you some help in navigating through the readings and I guess seeing as well a little bit from my point of view what's happening in the things that we have to study. So if you haven't seen the videos on the intro to this course, the general introduction, and the weekly personal report video, please go back and watch these videos. This is just a content lecture, so there's not going to be any information about how the course is structured. So if you don't know these things or you're confused about these things, please go check out these videos and make sure you've read the syllabus very carefully. So the first two readings are meant to set up the discussion about what is artificial intelligence, why is this interesting, how should we start thinking about the various problems that arise. And you will see, starting to read the first reading that's assigned, which is from a classic textbook in artificial intelligence by Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig, you'll see immediately this sense of interdisciplinarity that we encounter when studying and discussing artificial intelligence. So, starting with definitions, what is AI? And the first thing that you'll find in the book is a few definitions, and you may notice that AI is difficult to define, or many people use it as a term very differently. And nowadays, people tend to mean some models that do writing, that are text generators, some models that generate images, and then you may have seen models that are very useful in science, in medicine, etc. So for the purposes of this course, whenever we use the term AI, you should usually assume that what we mean is a machine learning model. And as we will see later on in the what's the current state of the art in AI, you will probably realize that most of the time we're talking about a very specific architecture in machine learning and deep neural networks, and that architecture is called the transformer architecture. We'll discuss more on this later on in this class. And these transformers, that architecture, is the basis of what you may know as ChatGPT, right? So these text generators. So generally, what we mean by AI for the purpose of this course will be deep neural networks, machine learning, deep neural networks, and in particular, these transformers that will be very often language models, and in particular, large language models. But before we go into that, so it's safe to just assume that that's what we're gonna mean, but before we go into that, it's very useful to have a few more definitions, and the first reading will help you very much with it. So please make sure you have enough clarity on what these things mean. So it starts with intelligence in general. In the previous video, I mentioned this class is a lot about narrating the story of intelligence, right? So you'll see that we'll go back a little bit. And the first idea of like understanding intelligence is rationality in the textbook. What is rationality? has to do with doing the right thing. What does this mean exactly, doing the right thing? And on your screen, you see all these different fields that have dealt with this question. What is the right thing? What does it mean to be rational? What's the rational mind? And you see all these fields that have tackled this question, starting with philosophy. The journey of artificial intelligence in many ways begins as a philosophical endeavor when Aristotle and various other philosophers are trying to clarify what does it mean to be thinking correctly, what is right thinking, and Aristotle comes up with the idea of syllogism, and particular logical syllogism, so at the genesis of logical thinking. And so you may see that this journey of intelligence and rationality in particular tend to be overlapping to a large extent. And that's of course why you see mathematics and logic, and further on, if you wanted to study the history of the problem a little bit more thoroughly, you would see how economics, the theory of the rational agent, decision theory, of course, neuroscience, psychology, linguistics, computer engineering, control theory, and cybernetics, all these subfields and fields have dealt with the question of what does it mean to be rational? What does it mean to be acting correctly and doing the rational thing? And a term that's gonna come in very handy in most discussions is that of agency or agent. Of course, you know what this term means in general usage. Here, what we mean might change depending on the context, but the first definition we get, an agent is something that acts, right? So you might have a computer program that acts, and that's an agent. Again, the details of that might get a little bit complicated, but keep in mind that being an agent might be very crucial for rationality, or is very crucial for rationality. And of course, rationality doesn't necessarily come as a one package thing. It might be coming in degrees. So that's also something to keep in mind. So going back a little bit to philosophy, trying to find what are the right rules, what are the correct rules to draw valid conclusions had been something that bothered philosophers. What's the best method to draw valid conclusions? And then, of course, that was formalized in various ways with mathematics and logic. But then it becomes pretty clear that the idea of being an agent that's intelligent, that's acting within an environment, has some physical consequences, and that might make you ask, okay, but what's that thing that processes the information? So first is, what is the agent? It's something that acts. That thing might be a black box. I don't really know what that thing does inside. So that thing might be a brain. Here's a brain, right? That brain might be biological. That brain might also be made out of some kind of non-biological hardware. It might be a computer. And so it becomes very interesting there to think about how the question from philosophy, from what is an agent, what's rational thinking, becomes a more neurobiological discussion, or a discussion in psychology about behavior, and then linguistics, and then control theory and cybernetics. Does mean like, how can I control the behavior of another agent? And then you will encounter this term that's called value alignment that comes up very early in the first reading. but it will be one of the main topics to be concerned about. What is value alignment and why is this a problem? In a nutshell, the question is, how can you install goals or values into a system? Any goals. And in particular, when we talk about value alignment, these goals, these values, should be your values, your desired values as a human. So that's what we call the alignment problem, and a lot of this course will be about trying to understand why this is a problem and how it has been addressed from different directions, and how it poses ultimately, well, you'll see in the other reading for this week by Nick Bostrom, an existential risk. So that was the first reading. We will be back for the second reading for this week.